Talk 360. Talk 360 for in-depth analysis on the week's news with Latif.
In Western Kenya, some of those operators, declined to follow, to take up those new pricing because they didn't like them. In fact, in Kisii or wherever, it was even worse because we have those kind of statistics.
So there are people who are selling at their own price.
Yes, they sold at whatever. Now, the challenge is ERC will only depend on the public or consumer complaint. They don't have the officers or officers outside there. Now, when those kind of things happen, then nobody's license is revoked by the regulator. What does that mean? The referee, either is disrespected or has no value. Because I've seen in football, in fact, one of the matches I'm just about to go and watch, I think when they show you a yellow, it shows something. When they show you a red, whether you like it or not, you walk out of the field. But I think this one sector, that there's a lot of indiscipline and actually raw impunity for the regulator. And that's why we are saying, give the regulator more powers. Yeah.
Do you like Eric, the powers that you have currently?
Eric, I want first to respond to what my brother Steve has said. I want to dispute that. ERC, we do what we call monitoring. And over the last 2 or 3 months, we have taken very many people to court. Very many stations have been closed. So all Mutoro needs to do is to come to ERC or to call me. I'll give him the statistics. So is that...
so you actually have been going out to the field. You find somebody who's not
and we are always in the field. Some cases are already in court. Others have admitted and they were charged. Other stations are still closed. And we close them through the district commissioners or the provincial administration. So he only needs to confirm the statistics with ERC. Mm-hmm. As far as the capacity of ERC is concerned, one of the things that we are doing at the moment is the review of the current Energy Act and the current energy policy. And we would want to encourage Steve and the consumers and the marketers and our other stakeholders to give the inputs there. The issues of governance, the issues of capacity are all addressed there, and it would really appreciate if you could get comments from all the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. It's an open document that will be circulated very soon. It's a draft that is almost going out for public. It has already been discussed with key stakeholders all over the country, or the counties, and very soon that document will be going to the next levels of approval. So if there are issues that the consumers or marketers or any other stakeholder would want addressed in the Energy Act or in the policy, this is the right time to do it.
Now, let me bring this show to a close, and I'll come to a close on one last point, which is this formula that we use. First of all, I know as the Consumers Federation, you have always been opposed to this formula. Are you still opposed to the formula? Are you opposed to the formula because it's not good for the consumer, or is it because it's too complicated?
Now, one thing that we came to discover is there's nothing wrong with the formula.
Very good.
Yeah, but there's everything wrong with the statistics that are taken in the formula.
The figures that are inputted.
Yeah. Look, one is margins. Which formula is used to apply to set the margins, for example, is not part of that formula. So a figure is just brought and said, look, they'll have maybe a margin of 10 shillings. Now, if you have a formula and you really want to disclose, I think the idea is also look at what if X equals to Y or whatever. I think it's important also to look at those small subsets that constitute the overall X. That is not explained. Then there are occasions when you look at now the issues that we've just been talking about, costs of inefficiencies, costs of corruption, they are not factored in. They should be, in my view, flexible so that if you are able to address some of those issues, efficiencies and governance, for example, it will be able to drop. I do not think, even if I had to join the PIEA as a member, one of the things I'll continue doing is to say the issue of setting prices, distorting the market, so that you don't have the forces of supply and demand addressed. I think that's, again, a big issue. I don't know why the marketers are very comfortable with that. The talk by ERC and others, okay, you'll be paying too much more than you're paying. But question is, for how long would you be paying that much? We understand. People in business will make money. But, we will also be understanding on some occasions, they'll have to levy a bit high. But now the problem we have at the moment, they'll reduce by 1 shilling. After 4 weeks, then another, they go to 10 shillings more. So, why can't we go to the supply and demand? And I had hoped the marketers will actually support consumers on
Eric,
that.
if you allow me to comment on the formula. This is published as a regulation. The formula was discussed.
Then passed in Parliament.
Consumers were invited. Steve, my brother, was there. He gave his comments. They were incorporated. So it's a formula that is owned by us Kenyans. It's not an ERC formula. It's not a Ministry of Energy formula. It's not a marketer's formula. And I'm happy that he has now appreciated the formula. Now he supports the formula. Two of the key things. The formula, it doesn't have to, the publishing or the calculating of the prices doesn't necessarily have to be done by ERC. If I was to give you that formula today, you'll get the same figures that I will get. So it's a formula that is transparent and it's open to everybody. The marketers have it. It is in the website. Anybody can use that formula and you arrive at the same. But the policy maker decided that because of market variance, because of the inconsistent behavior that was there with the marketers, when prices were going up, they were quick to increase the prices. When they were going down,
they never brought it down.
They never brought them down, or they were very slow. The consumers in Kenya felt cheated, and the ministry came in and they said they are going to bring in a formula, which was discussed by everybody and agreed. The responsibility of calculating those prices was given to ERC. If today the policy maker, from recommendation from wherever, the marketers, the industry, the regulator, or the consumer, feels that the formula is we no longer need to continue doing the regulation. You just drop the regulation and we'll continue in the same way that we were before. But I want to say something. If you compare the numbers in 2008, the numbers today, the international prices, the exchange rates, if we were not regulating the prices today, consumers would be paying in the range of 6 to 7 shillings above what we are paying. That is for premium and kerosene. As for diesel, they would be paying 15.6 shillings above
15 shillings above what we are paying today.
And I have used a number that is very similar to the international prices that we have today, to a figure that was there in July 2008 at an exchange rate of 67 compared to an exchange rate of 84.5 today. Those are the kind of numbers you'd be expecting to be paying today.
I'm sure the oil marketers.
I have to comment on that. First, I want to state one thing because we are one people as a country.
Yeah.
And I rightly agree with Steve here where you say forces of supply and demand, because the industry does not, in principle, feel that there should be a price control, because it does not bode well for competition, free competition, and efficiency. And going back again to the point that I made earlier, that unfortunately you cannot apply a high-level price cap and ignore everything else that goes on to arriving at that. Today, if you were to consider, and because of our population, a big population is living in areas that land values have actually gone up, isn't it? So there is no incentive, and it's not recognized in the price formula to actually then warrant the development of a station in that place where the land values are that high up, isn't it? Yeah. So today you find that any new station that is coming up in the places where land values are extremely low, isn't it? That is one of the problems that
those have low populations.
Those have low populations, isn't it? But now you have a challenge where today land values in Hurlingham, land values in Westlands, and big populations that live in Kangemi, Kawangware, and those corridors, land values there $2-3 million for a parcel of land, isn't it? That will never see the development of a station, isn't it? And then you start having then the social issues of queues in the existing stations and wear and tear and stuff like that. Now, the industry has strongly advocated for when the proposal came to regulate prices, the industry was strongly against that. I think that has not changed. But we are a law-abiding industry, so we follow, isn't it? We are not too happy about it. Other things that are not captured is the cost of investment. Now, you raised a very good point earlier about the pipeline, the infrastructure, basically. The moment you do not incentivize the investor to actually continue putting up the infrastructure, then the same consumer unfortunately ends up suffering the negative effects of broken down infrastructure down the road. This country, if you look at the study by Kipra that is saying that the demand will double and then triple, I think, by 2030, isn't it? If we do not have a corresponding development of infrastructure, because today, when you give an inadequate margin that does not recognize the need to invest for more, then people will tend to actually meet the other pressing requirements, isn't it? Try to stay alive. Then what will happen is that, unfortunately, the country will actually start suffering these things down the road.
Long and short of it is that this formula is not good for the industry.
This formula, if we are going to remain in a formula, we think it actually ought to recognize, yes, it ought to recognize the need for investment. It ought to recognize the true cost of finance. It then ought to try and recognize basically I think today it's recognizing the cost of the cost of the oil as reflected by the world price. Basically, the base inputs are going in, but the cost of finance is not adequately recognized. Neither is it. It's actually zero on quiet on things like investments.
So just to conclude,
yes.
Well, there's one area in which you actually agree with Steve,
yes.
that this formula needs to be amended.
Yes.
No, not just one area. We agree in many.
Yeah, we actually have agreed in many areas.
And
yeah.
The only place that and we recognize that there will be a tension all the time because. Like any consumer, I also want lower prices. But at some point, that lower price may not be available all the time.
I think, Eric, one thing that has come out from Francis' statement, and I think I wish more Kenyans would listen to this. One is that he is very diplomatic in agreeing with us what we've been maybe undiplomatically been protesting about. Yeah. That formula is still only relevant today, simply because there are some aspects like the margins, once the marketers are happy, so the formula is relevant. But on the day this country will not be given, the margin will be given, that formula will be useless, and it will not take even energy policy or anything. It will just die like that.
Gentlemen, I've got to end this show. I've got to end this show at this point. Actually, we've gone over this show by very many minutes, and I have to thank you very much for coming and for taking your Sunday time off to come and talk to Kenyans about this very, very pressing issue of fuel prices. Engineer Linus Gitonga is the Director of Petroleum at the Energy Regulatory Commission. Stephen Mutoro, you know him, is the Secretary General of the Consumer Federation of Kenya. And Francis Njogu is the Vice Chairman of the Petroleum Institute of East Africa and the Chief Executive Officer of Gulf Energy. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for all the comments and questions that were coming in on Facebook and on Twitter. I was actually incorporating them, just not that I just wasn't reading them as you've put them here verbatim. But thank you very much for listening. Have a very beautiful week ahead. My name is Eric Latif.
Talk 360 with Latif.
Check your shop.